Welcome to this week's Q&A. I hope all the Aussie expats around the world are doing well. I can report from Sydney in Australia that things are certainly very locked down here. And this week's question, it relates to a lot of questions that we received recently in relation to what's going on in the lockdowns, particularly in Sydney and Melbourne. And it was about consumer sentiment. So how is a change in consumer sentiment going to impact the Australian housing market? And as you all know, in my opinion, there is no housing market, there are many markets. So let's look at it though. And the change in consumer sentiment, as one can guess, has been a sharp spike downwards. Consumer sentiment, both in from ANZ and Westpac measures, has had a decline, as we'd all anticipate. But it's more important about what's going to happen from an economic viewpoint. Is the consumer going to stop spending? What's going to happen in relation to employment? I mean, they're the real things that may potentially have an impact on the price of housing in the various markets around the country. Right now, I would anticipate that there will be clearly a reduction in volumes in both Melbourne and in Sydney, and that will be borne out, I think, over the next number of weeks when we look at the CoreLogic data and the other data that's supplied. That's pretty much a given. But how is it really going to impact the housing market? Look, I think from a positive viewpoint that for a lot of those people that we've been dealing with over the last months that are looking to buy into the Sydney or Melbourne property markets, whether it be first home buyers, right sizes, you name it, this may be a really good opportunity for those people to actually be able to manage to buy something. They've been having a difficult time trying to find something, whether it be at auction or otherwise, that could actually culminate in a purchase for them. So I think that's a real positive, and I don't think it'll be here long term, because I do believe that in terms of the general housing markets, we'll see what we saw last year. And that is that after these lockdowns finish, there'll be a very strong rebound in both activity and demand. I don't see prices moving down substantially, certainly not, as I always say, for quality assets in sought after locations. And I see this more as an opportunity for buyers, perhaps, rather than any sort of detrimental impact that's longer term on people who are sellers. And we'll keep you posted, obviously, in terms of following these numbers on a weekly and monthly basis. But I think it's really important to look at these things and say, what can we do with this? Because most people ask these questions clearly with some ulterior motive, i.e., what's going to happen to what I'm trying to achieve? And this may be a really good time for people to be able to come into the market, enter it under their own perhaps pace. It's taken some edge off the seller's advantage, and that should really help everyone, and I think be very constructive for housing pricing and also for the housing market in general. Now, there is a caveat to all of this. If the lockdowns continue in this severity in Sydney and Melbourne and they last long term, then there will be an issue. Clearly it will impact the Australian economy, and we've had a massive recovery obviously in the Australian economy. It's really, really strong, but this could have an impact. But I don't see that being, at this point in time, I see it as a transitory situation. So it's not going to be long term, it's not going to last through. And if I were out there, I'd be making an opportunity of this. But as always, I hope you're all well. And for any of our clients and all of our clients around the world, all the Aussie expats, if you have any questions that you want answered, particularly in relation to what's happening in Sydney at the moment, just reach out and we'll certainly do our best to help out with the information for you. Have a great day, have a great evening, and I'll see you next week at our Q&A.